Welcome to A Growing Concern. We got John Krallman, excuse me. He's a staff attorney for an organization called Neighbors for Clean Air, and we've got graphics for them. It's whatsinourair.org. And I ran across an article a while back written by the, I don't know if it's the CEO or the executive director, Mary Lovato, is it?
Mary Pivoto, she's our president.
She's the president of that organization, and about the horrible air we have in this mainly the metropolitan area, I would suppose, having to do with diesel fumes. But John's been with the organization a couple of years, and he's an attorney, and we're going to talk about this for about 25 minutes. So welcome to the program, John.
Thank you very much for having me on the program.
So you say you've done a little bit of media, but no TV. So
no, this is my first time on TV.
All right. So, well, you don't seem very nervous. That's good, because there's a lot to talk about, and I'm sure you're passionate about this. From what we talked about earlier in the evening, before we went on the air, about the diesel fumes, that article that she wrote opened my eyes to a lot of issues, and I understand another article came out today. Was it the Oregonian?
The Oregonian, Rob Davis from the Oregonian has been doing a lot of investigative research into sort of the diesel stuff. Mary put him onto that. And the article that came out today was talking about school buses and the fact that in Oregon we're lagging behind California and Washington on making our school buses cleaner for kids as they're going to and from school. The diesel particulate that comes out of school buses, there's actually been some studies that show that levels inside the buses that the children are actually breathing are higher than the outside air. California has started requiring diesel particulate filters on those buses, so has Washington. Washington made a concerted effort, spent millions of dollars to retrofit all of their buses with those filters, which reduce the particulate matter that's really the gravest concern by 95 to 99%. So a significant reduction in the particulates that are coming out of those engines that the kids are being exposed to. And in Oregon, we really haven't made that push. In the Portland area, we have less of a problem because Portland Public Schools First Student has switched over a lot of them to natural gas-fired. But throughout the rest of Oregon, there are lots of school systems. Salem, Corvallis are two of the largest that still have predominantly older diesel engines that haven't been, that it's unclear whether they've been retrofitted. But the article online, you can go through and you can actually search by bus route. So if you're concerned,
I saw that. So online would be for the whatsinourair.org?
We don't have a link on our website at the moment. We do on Facebook. So if you go to our Facebook, you can find the link to the Oregonian article where they have that searchable database.
I saw that when I was researching this, and I thought that's great. You can just plug in what school bus in the Portland area, and you'll find out.
And you can search by school district as well. And I think it includes private school districts. So some of the private schools that run their own bus companies, have their own bus services. Those are included in that database.
I see. Well, now you mentioned particulate, and I take it that there's more than one, and these are probably, some of these are the same as gasoline, but some of them are worse?
They're actually a lot worse than gasoline. Gasoline doesn't have a lot of particulate matter that comes out. There is some, but diesel particulate matter is sort of a term of art that encompasses a lot of different chemicals that are coming out of diesel. So when you burn diesel in a compression ignition engine, like in a heavy duty truck, like a tractor trailer, in construction equipment, in your light duty truck, what comes out is ultrafine particulates. So you're talking about particulates that are less than 2.5 microns. To give you a kind of a scale there, the average human hair is somewhere between 70 and 120 microns.
Holy cow. Yeah.
So these are incredibly tiny particulates. Your body doesn't really have a defense mechanism for them. For the larger particulates, the particulates that are 10 microns, your nasal hairs, your mucus, your body has ways of filtering those particulates out, but these ultrafine ones, it really doesn't, and they end up getting really deep within the lungs and can even pass into the bloodstream.
And through the blood, the real fine capillaries in the blood.
Through the capillaries.
In your lungs.
And the problem is that diesel particulate matter, the exhaust contains about 40 different chemicals that are considered carcinogenic, including things like benzene, lead, toluene. So it's a mixture of all of these carcinogenic chemicals. The World Health Organization lists diesel particulate matter as a known carcinogen, and over a decade ago, the last time EPA actually looked at it, they listed it as a likely carcinogen. California lists it as, I'm pretty sure, as a known carcinogen as well. So it is a very potent toxic, and if you look at where California and Washington have prioritized, they've really looked from an air toxics perspective at diesel, because the toxicity of it swamps out a lot of all the other air toxics that you deal with.
You know, I mentioned to the viewers, if you've ever sat at a stoplight like I have with a big old 1 ton or 3/4 ton diesel truck sitting up about this high, and you're at a light for 30-40 seconds, now you can smell that diesel. It's not the same as a car. And is that smell indicative of the particulate matter, or is that something totally different?
That's probably part of it. I can't say with certainty whether that, one of those things about air toxics is you can't always smell them. Sometimes you smell something and it's not toxic. Sometimes you can't smell what is toxic. And so you sort of have to dig into the science to really, odors are a really good key to there's something in the air. But that doesn't necessarily always correlate with toxicity.
Sure.
But the newer trucks, especially we're really talking about older diesel trucks.
Older, but pre what?
Pre 2007. So starting in 2000.
That's still most of them then.
Yeah, that is still most of them. Starting in 2007, EPA published. Put out standards that 2007 and later, heavy-duty diesel trucks have to have diesel particulate filters.
This is federally then?
Yeah, federally. So new engines. So that's where the federal government kicks in, is on those new engines. The problem is, diesel engines last 30, 40, 60 years sometimes. And so it takes a while for those engines to slowly fade out of the inventory. And so we're left with sort of those older diesel engines that don't have the diesel particulate filters. And where we've, in Oregon, is relying on some funding from part of the stimulus package that was passed back in 2008 was the Diesel Emission Reduction Act, or DERA. And we've tried to rely on funds from that, and we've gotten about $7 million over the last several years to try and retrofit trucks and other engines, but it's just been a drop in the bucket. Washington has invested millions of dollars in state funding to supplement that, and California has an incredibly complex and detailed program to start phasing out those older engines. There was an article a couple of weeks ago about Oregon becoming a dumping ground for older diesel engines, and that's because of the regulations in California. Starting this year, you cannot run a 1993 or older engine in California unless you have a particulate filter on it. And so a lot of people, instead of investing the money to retrofit it, are just selling them off, and they're selling them to Oregon and Nevada and Arizona and Washington. And so we're getting a lot of this influx of older engines.
So you're talking about fleets or just individuals? Or both?
Both, I would suspect. The data is sometimes hard to come by just because it's not directly tracked as well as it could be. But we have seen, I think it's 1/5 of new trucks that are registered in Oregon, or 1/5 of used trucks that are newly registered in Oregon are coming from California, I think, is the statistic that the DEQ has developed from ODOT's information. But there has been trucks coming out here from California partially because of the regulations, and they're only just now starting. So in the coming years, we're going to probably see more of them.
More and more. And as the engine, if it's anything like a gasoline engine, as they get older, they probably release more of those particulates, I would imagine.
I think that's maybe accurate. I don't actually know that, but that makes sense just as far as the engine deteriorates. If you don't do the required operation and maintenance of the engine, it can deteriorate and you can get more of those particulates.
Well, you said that Mary wrote an article about this, and this article you just mentioned, it came out today. Hers was in the Oregonian as well. And what tipped her off to this? How did she get digging into this issue?
That's an interesting story. Mary got into air toxics back in 2009. and she was searching online for her child, the lunch menu for her child's school, and ran across a study called the smokestack effect. This was a study done by researchers at Johns Hopkins, University of Massachusetts Amherst, and University of Maryland, that looked at industrial sources of air toxics and their effect on schools. And what she found when she took a look at that is Chapman Elementary, which is in northwest Portland, ranked in the bottom 2% in the nation because of industrial air pollution.
It's near the industrial area over there.
It is, and is affected by that industrial sanctuary. But you find all the other schools in Portland run into similar situations. Cesar Chavez, Roosevelt High School were similarly low ranked. No school in Portland was better than the bottom 30% in the nation, and most of them were in the bottom 10%. Wow. And so she really started advocating for, realizing there's an issue here that we can't see, we can't smell, and nobody's really talking about it. And so we worked on advocacy around the industrial sanctuary and specifically ESCO, which is the steel foundry there right on Vaughan, and ended up signing a good neighbor agreement with them. Neighbors for Clean Air did, that they invested about $5 million in pollution reduction, and ended up doing about 17 different projects that will reduce pollution by about 20%. From there, Mary and our organization really realized it's not a single industry and it's not just a Northwest Portland problem, and started really digging into it. At the same time, the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality was undertaking a program called the Portland Air Toxics Solutions, or PATS process. And basically what they did is they did an inventory of all of the sources of toxic air pollution in the Portland metro area. So that includes Clark County up in Vancouver, Washington County, Clackamas, and put together the inventory and then did modeling. And the modeling showed that there are about 17 different chemicals that are above what they put out as health-based benchmarks. Included in that is diesel. Now, DEQ's analysis shows diesel from on-road and off-road add up to probably about half the total risk. But that's using Oregon's benchmark, which is 33 times less stringent than Washington or California's. So if you use Washington or California's, what they compare as a standard, diesel swamps out everything as far as a risk driver.
Just that one source.
Yeah, so it's from construction vehicles, it's from light-duty trucks, it's from heavy-duty trucks, so on-road and off-road sources. And just the risk from that diesel, the burning diesel particulates, or the burning of diesel that produces the particulates, really is the biggest driver in the Portland metro area. And so that's what we've started to focus on from an advocacy standpoint, and understanding where we are and where we could be.
I see. Well, I think you brought a little video that's about 3 minutes long. I think we might run that video right now, and we can come back and spend another 10 minutes or so. I've got a couple questions I'd like to ask, and it's a large subject. We could probably take more time, and maybe we'll do that in the future. I'd like to do that.
That sounds
maybe
great.
Get you and Mary both to come on in the future and talk about this. All right, if that's ready, we'll go for it.
For a long time, probably like a lot of Portlanders, like a lot of Americans, I just kind of assumed, oh, this is Portland, this isn't LA. I mean, I know that LA got smog problems. Portland's blue sky, it's beautiful. Having no idea that we have pockets within our city that are among the dirtiest air in the country.
In Portland, we have this reputation for being environmental champions, but here we have this major problem, which is that we do not have clean air, and we have a public health issue on our hands, frankly, a public health crisis. People are unaware of it, and when they are aware of it, they feel like, well, this is Portland. What can we possibly do that we're not already doing?
The Oregon Department of Environmental Quality estimates that diesel emissions alone account for 468 deaths in Oregon every year. That's more than the combined total of drunk driving deaths and homicides in our state every year.
A healthy community isn't only about the delivery of health services, it's about dealing with avoiding hazards to one's health that comes about from a variety of things. But I'm very clear that there's some very specific health effects of environmental degradation. That's become a very important process for me.
The estimate of the total costs of environmentally attributable disease in the state of Oregon for children alone is $1.10 billion per year, including treating children with asthma, neurobehavioral disorders, birth defects, and cancer. The state also loses over $4 billion yearly in treatment for illness, hospitalizations, lost workdays, and premature death as a result of diesel engine emissions alone.
The biggest issue that I deal with as a scientist is the fact that people tend to believe that if they just got the right information in the hands of the decision makers, that they would do the right thing. And what I've found is that it is just so not true. It's important, it's very important to have scientific information, but it's more important to know how to use that and how to take the advocacy of a community's work and incorporate the scientific information into that work.
So an issue like this, when you ask the question, whose job is it? It's no one person's job. It's got to be all of our jobs. We're the coalition of the benevolently irrational, the good people doing good things for no good reason, right? Or maybe for the best reason of all, to make our communities better. And that set of communities, that the people who are willing to put themselves out for the good of the order, that needs to be bolstered, because it's not going to happen by itself.
Most people think, oh, we can't make a difference. And that's just so untrue. It's so untrue. People have to understand that you have the power to do anything you want if you're right and if it's going to help a larger population.
The toxic soup of industrial pollutants in car and truck exhaust isn't just an annoyance. It's quite literally killing us. It's time to change that. It's time to get involved and clean up our air again. Everyone wants clean and safe air, but of all the nonprofits in the state, only one is fighting every day for your right to breathe. Neighbors for Clean Air.
All right, excellent job on that. And she said that, people can do what they want to do, and I'm wondering, before we get to what the people can do, what our government's doing, legislature and the governor's office, because it's in their ballpark to deal with this.
It certainly is. The state has an ability to do what California did and phase out the use of these older engines, or require retrofits, or invest money in those retrofits. A study by the Multnomah County Health Department on the construction of the East Side Courthouse, they required diesel engines that had been either retrofitted or were new, so they had less diesel emissions, and they calculated that the return on investment from investing in that kind of technology versus less public health dollars spent is about a 10 to 1. So for every $1 of money you invest, you get about $10 back that you're not having to spend on asthma, on cancer, on all kinds of other health related issues. So it just makes sense to be investing in cleaning up our engines and our inventory here in Oregon. Both Senator Denbrow and Representative Greenlick have indicated that they are looking for a solution during this legislative session to do something. Just today, Chair Kafori and Commissioner Bailey sent a letter to the editor urging the legislators to come up with that kind of comprehensive solution. So we're really hopeful that the Oregon legislature will do something this legislative session to address the issues of diesel particulate matter. And our big thing is, at a state level, you have a lot closer contact with your elected representatives. So call them, email them, let them know that, if this is a concern to you, let them know so that they know that they have the support of the public behind them. Email the governor's office and let him know that he should be pushing for this kind of thing.
Right. If you have children, you should be concerned about it, because it affects children, as we started out this segment about, with the diesel in the school buses. It affects them a whole lot more than it affects me when I was sitting next to that diesel at the stoplight.
It does, and one of those things about children is that they have smaller lungs. They actually breathe about 50% more per body weight, so they're breathing in more of it. Their immune systems aren't fully developed, so they are really more at risk than full-grown adults are. Because of these toxics.
I was surprised when all this run your diesels on French fry oil and all that. I was just really surprised to find out that Diesel designed the diesel engine to run on that sort of whatever it was. It wasn't French fried oil back then.
I think it was whale oil.
Whale oil or something like that. But talking to you earlier, I found out that there's actually some particulates coming from that. I would thought it would have been a lot cleaner, but it is somewhat cleaner. But
yeah, I mean, I don't have the data. I haven't really looked into to the data on that, just because of the predominance of traditional fossil fuel fired
petroleum.
diesel.
Yeah.
And that's really where the main concern comes from, because it includes impurities like lead, and when you burn it, you end up with benzene and toluene as part of the exhaust from it as well. So it that's what we're focusing on, because that is predominantly what the fleet runs off of.
But the fact remains that whether it's the petroleum or the other, we're dealing with the particulates that are getting out there in the air, and it is worse here than anywhere else on the West Coast, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, Multnomah County ranks as the 4th highest county in the country because of diesel exhaust. So EPA went through and, based on emissions inventories from all the states and all the counties, you look at Multnomah County, and it's right there in the bottom, because worse than LA as far as the amount of diesel exhaust, or the concentration of diesel exhaust we have in Multnomah County. If you saw the video, based on data from EPA and the Clean Air Task Force out of Boston, diesel exhaust is killing almost 500 people a year in Oregon. The latest estimates say that the cost from premature deaths, lost sick days, or lost days due to sickness, asthma attacks, hospitalizations, all of that stuff amounts to about $3.5 billion a year in costs to the state of Oregon. So it is a significant drag on the economy.
I remember a few years ago I read that you see these sleepers, these diesel trucks parked off, and there's somebody in the sleeper, and a lot of times they'll run that engine for a long period of time, and cancer among those truck drivers is terrible because of that.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at who's at the most risk, you look at truck drivers, construction workers, and then you look at the communities that are closely associated with large sources of diesel, like rail yards, like the transportation corridors,
refineries, maybe.
Yeah, an analysis by Multnomah County. Again, the Multnomah County Health Department has done a lot of work on this, and they've been great. They did an analysis and looked at the environmental justice implications, and communities of color, communities that have, I think, 15% or more of people of color, are at 2 to 3 times higher risk or higher exposure due to diesel. If you're in an African American community, or a community that has a large proportion of African Americans, you're at 3 times exposure levels than the rest of the county. And that's true throughout the metro area as well. So not only is it a huge health problem, it's a huge environmental justice concern, I think.
Sure, it's discrimination. And it's not just for diesel, it's for a lot of other chemical and toxic poisons across the country. Diesel is just one of them. That environmental justice is a very big issue that sometimes it gets put down a little bit lower than the health issues, and it really shouldn't be, I don't think, in my mind.
No, I mean, the idea of having equality in health and making sure that just because you're in a community experiencing poverty, or you're in a community of color, that shouldn't mean that you're at higher risk. The Department of Environmental Quality, as part of their Portland Air Toxics study, or Portland Air Toxics Solution, looked at the environmental justice implications and found that throughout, for almost all of the sources, or all of the sources of the major sources of air toxics, so diesel, wood smoke, industrial sources, communities of color are at greater risk because of those, because they tend to be those sources tend to be congregated around those communities.
And it's a shame, and we know that that's how it is. Well, we're getting down towards the end of the segment, so we'll just get back to what people can do. And what you're saying is that this diesel has these terrible particulates in it, and the only way to really deal with the problem for the older from 2007 and back, because 2007 and forward, the EPA has come out with more stringent, which proves that the car companies can do it if they have to. And so to go back from 2007, laws are going to have to be passed mostly on the state level, in order to put catalytic converters or something on these?
So starting in 2007, EPA required all new diesel engines to have a diesel particulate filter, and then in 2010 they increased that even more to require the use of what is known as a selective catalytic reducer, or SCR. That gets at the nitrogen dioxide pollution that comes out, but the diesel particulate filter is really where we knock down most of the risk. And what you see in California is they're requiring either the trucks be sold or reclaimed or retrofitted, because what you can do is for most of these vehicles, there's equipment out there that you can basically buy off the shelf. Cost usually runs somewhere between $6,000 and $10,000 to install a particulate filter on the exhaust, so you're actually scrubbing out those particulates. And they can, they vary based on the newest ones. The ones that are installed on new engines reduce particulate matter by 99%.
Wow.
Yeah, the retrofits can go anywhere from 85 to 95 to even better. So they're not quite as good as a new engine, but they're much better than just running it without the filter. So this one, unlike so many other problems, is not a technical problem. It's not a how do we reduce. We know how to reduce the pollution. It's just a matter of political will and making this a priority. And so that's why I say, if hearing about this concerns you, call your state legislator, call your state senator, call your state rep, call the governor, let them know that this is something that they really should be dealing with.
And also go online to what'sinourair.org. We've got, I had 3 articles sent to me that was off of the Oregonian. They're probably available on your website, maybe?
They aren't on our website just yet. We do have some information on our website, but if you go to Facebook and take a look at our Facebook page, there's 2 articles in the Oregonian and 1 from the Portland Tribune as well that have come out in the last couple of weeks, and we have links to those on our Facebook page, and we'll be updating our website as we get more information as well.
And so that isn't, the Facebook would be Neighbors for Clean Air, not What's in Our Air, probably.
That's correct. Yeah, on Facebook we're Neighbors for Clean Air. Our website is What's in Our Air, and if you go to our website, there's a link to our Facebook page. There's also a link to our newsletter where we'll be sending out more information about this and other work that we do as well.
All right. Well, I sure appreciate you coming on and clarifying the air, so to speak.